Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to talk about part 3 of the Dark Tower series, The Wastelands. But before we get into that, just like in the previous videos, this video will contain spoilers of the previous 2 books, The Gunslinger and The Drawing of the Three. So if you haven't read those books, just be aware that I will be covering some of the events that happened in those books. Now, by the time this book was published in 1991, the Dark Tower series itself had already begun to develop a following. People who had tracked down the original Gunslinger and The Drawing of the Three had started sharing their opinions on the books, getting the word out about them, and swapping copies of the books to the point where demand was starting to increase and increase and increase. Along with that demand came the intuition for King to write more about the Dark Tower, and it started to influence his writings in other books such as Insomnia and Rose Matter and other books of that nature that came out around the same time. And it was a nice surprise for Dark Tower fans to find these little hidden references, we'll call them, in other books. And it's pretty much a tradition that continues to this day. As for the story itself, it takes place about a month after the events of The Drawing of the Three. Roland has found himself some companions to share his adventure with and hopefully win his way to the Dark Tower, and has even begun training them as gunslingers. It's during one of these moments of training in the woods of Outworld where we learn about certain elements of Midworld's past, such as the Great Old Ones, the Guardians of the beams themselves, what powers them. And we also learn that Roland is slowly going insane. The overall timeline in his mind, I guess you would say, is literally split in the moment where he meets Jake Chambers, the boy from the Gunslinger. And the reason it's split is because in one half of his mind, he meets Jake Chambers and ends up sacrificing him in order to reach the Man in Black. But in the second book, he ends up saving his life. And because he saved his life, there's no way for Jake to arrive at the way station in the first book, since that was the way he came by, was his doorway was literally death itself. So in this way, Roland literally has voices screaming in his head that the boy is dead, the boy is alive, the boy is dead, the boy is alive, that sort of thing, and it's driving him crazy. So crazy to the point where he actually gives up his guns because he's afraid he'll run mad and shoot his companion, or himself. As this is going on in Midworld, back in an alternate Earth of 1977, Jake himself is also going insane because he feels he should have died already, but he didn't. So he's constantly raving about doors in his school writing. He's staring at doors, thinking they'll open into Midworld, even though he doesn't know what the hell that is. And it basically gets to the point where he's forced to ditch his life as he knows it and go out and try to find this doorway. Now, I promise I'm not going to spoil the rest, but rest assured, all things serve the beam in this case, and the way we get to reunite these characters is truly one of the amazing moments, at least in my opinion, in literary history. To me, it ranks right up there with Bilbo escaping from Gollum's cave. You know, it's just one of those classic scenes where you really aren't going to forget what happens. And that's just the first part of the book. That's the first, I'd say, about almost a half the book is about that. After that, it gets really interesting. As the story progresses more into Midworld, and we even pick up a lovable Billy Bumbler along the way, we get to meet some of the inhabitants of Midworld, and a city in particular, Lud of all places. A city which strikes a rather harsh resemblance, in some ways, to New York City itself, and even the characters from New York remark on this. Of course, that's just from a distance and a passing glance, as opposed to when they actually enter the city, everything is completely different. And as soon as they do enter that city, we're off to the races, almost literally. And with that cliffhanger, much like the book, I'm going to leave it here, and I'll get back to you next time to discuss part 4, Wizard and Glass, my personal favorite of the series. I cannot wait to talk about this book, but I'm going to give it some time to get my thoughts down. And hopefully you all enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. I'll see you next time. Take care.